Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yo, what's up, everyone? It's your boy Ant West, and we're back with a live stream. I honestly have absolutely no idea who's in here right now. I'm about to change up some settings in just a little bit, but I thought I'll go on ahead and welcome you guys to Matters of the Dunyah live stream. I don't know who's in here. I probably no one. Let me give me just a second to like pull up something, and we'll go from there. Okay. Uh, let's see. I'm gonna open a new tab. I'm gonna go to YouTube. I'm gonna go to my live stream, make sure everything is good, and we'll go from stream. All right. One like already. Okay, we got a like. Okay, we got two now because I'm gonna like my own stream. All right. Oh crap! I didn't mean to pause my stream. All right, there we go. I'm gonna go to my live stream, make sure everything is good. All right, so I think we're fine. Yeah, I think we're good. But this is just a test live stream. Thank you for the other like. I just saw that you liked it. Whoever that was, just now liked it. Appreciate you. Let me pop out the live real quick. Let me pop out the live chat so I can see you guys' comments. Okay. And I'm just going to put this onto the side. All right. So I think we're good. Once again, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And what's going on, everybody? Anybody that's tuning into the live stream, welcome. It's we're now talking to the Dunyahs of the Matters of the Dunyah, episode 2. I had an episode 1, I think, a while ago, but I wanted to make another one. I think I've actually had 3 at this point, but I'm going to consider the last one a legitimate first one, and this is going to be the second. So if you're watching this right now, I'm going to look at the camera. If you're watching this right now, just understand that recently we had a lot of events in the Dunyah it's been going on. And I just wanted to kind of give my insight to this. I did promise I was going to stream earlier today. I've been kind of caught up. I overslept. I studied a little bit last night, and I fell asleep about like 7 in the morning. And I overslept until about noon, and then I got up to shower, and then, everything like that. So it's just been a little hectic of a morning, but nonetheless, we're going to continue the live stream. And I just want to make sure I hear everything. So just give me a second to like test everything out. Make sure everything is up to date and kosher for me. Man, I got way too many tabs for YouTube open, man. I gotta close some of these tabs. I think it's this one. No, I already get this one open. And got way too many tabs open, guys. There we go. Episode 2. So I'm just going to play this real quick and listen to myself. I'm just going to mute myself real quick and listen to see if you can actually hear in the footage. 1 second. And got way too many tabs open, guys. There we go. Episode 2. So I'm just going to play this real quick and listen to myself. I'm just going to mute myself real quick and listen to see if you can actually hear in the footage. 1 second.
So these kind of things has made some within the Muslim community, more so across the pond in the States, ally with the left, and not understanding that this was gonna be happening in the years to come.
There we go. Episode 2. So I'm just gonna play this real quick and listen to myself. I'm just gonna mute myself real quick and listen to see if you can actually hear in the footage. 1 second.
So these kind of things has made some within the Muslim community, more so across the pond in the States, ally with the left, and not understanding that this was gonna be happening in the years to come.
There we go. Episode 2. So I'm just gonna play this real quick and listen to myself. I'm just gonna mute myself real quick and listen to see if you can actually hear in the footage. 1 second.
So these kind of things has made some within the Muslim community, more so across the pond in the States, ally with the left, and not understanding that this was gonna be happening in the years to come.
There we go. Episode 2. So I'm just gonna play this real quick and listen to
They may
myself.
be
I'm just gonna mute myself real quick and
outspoken.
listen to see if you
Positions.
can
Yeah, so-
actually hear in the footage. 1 second.
So these kind of things has made some within the Muslim community, more so across the pond in the States, ally with the left.
Okay, I think I figured it out. So my bad. I was trying to test the settings a little bit because I'm going to. So this is why. So it was recording me, and then it recorded that, then it recorded this. That's why you heard it 3 times just now. I think that's all I need to do for the test. I think we're good. I'm just going to leave this muted, and I still have the chat popped out. So, I think. Do I? No, I do not. It's fine. But yeah, so okay, now we're good. I'm gonna pop out the chat again so I can read you guys' comments, and we're gonna continue the live stream from here. Okay, so here we go. So guys, once again, the general reason why I'm making this live stream is because of because of the purpose of like what's going on within the Dunyah, especially because of being Pride Month. I want everybody to understand my stance on things. And like I'm one of those people where it's like, and it's funny because recently I just had an argument, right? I just had an argument with a woman recently, right? And one thing that we were talking about in the discussion is like, why is it so bad that these schools are trying to push it onto kids that it's okay to be an ally, and that it's, being gay is not for everyone, but you still want to be an ally. So for one thing, so let's just break this all down, right? And I'm just going to come from a logical standpoint, and I'm going to try to essentially stay aligned with Islam on the stances of this, right? And the stance is that obviously in Islam, at least from what I was taught from different teachers, it's not sinful to be gay, right? It's not sinful to be a gay, like be a gay. It's perfectly fine. But it is sinful when two people of the same gender mess around with each other. It is sinful when you do things damaging to your body, when you go and tattoo yourself or you cut off certain limbs that Allah gave you. Regardless of what it may be, this is like the extent of what Islam teaches, right? And there's other things as well, obviously, but I'm just going to touch on the things that I do know. And the thing is for me is that I personally, I have always been around people that have been gay. Like I've always dealt with people that were gay or who were finding themselves and things of that sort, right? But the thing is for me, right? Which is, hold on, before I begin. Oh man, no, I'm going to continue speaking, but don't mind me. But anyway, let me make sure I got the right. Got to make sure I do everything. Okay, because it's okay. It's good. Okay, so anyway, the thing is for me is that I don't have a problem with gay people. I don't have a problem with you being gay or whatever it may have you. The thing is, though, this is where it's even hard for me to defend the community in some way, right? I should just say the rainbow community. I'm probably going to get demonetized, so automatically, but it's perfectly fine. I'm not here to, make money anymore, really. But the expectation is just to educate and like have the conversation. See, the problem is with me, I've had like just from a pure logical standpoint, right? Is that when it comes to this community, I never had a problem with them. But the thing is, it's a tricky situation to deal with them, right? Because for one thing, well, let's just talk about like men and women relations right now within the Dunya. Like they're not in the best place. And one of the things that is always brought up in conversation is that how men, quote unquote, can't control themselves by feminists. Now, when we take this approach, let's apply this to the LGBTQ. And the reason why I say that is that when it comes to impulse, when it comes to nafs, when it comes to desires, we have a hard time just as normal human beings to control our desires. And I was pretty much, when I was having a conversation with this woman, I was pretty much kind of like in a sense being shamed because I can't control myself without having some supreme being kind of guide me on what I can or cannot control. And I was a little annoyed by that, to be honest with you, because the thing is for me is that like I get so annoyed when it comes to shaming tactics of who I was and who I became. And that's one thing that just annoys me the most, right? It's like, oh, because you can't, since you, of all people, can't control yourself. Now, you're pretty much like, just because you can't control yourself, everybody else has to pretty much cater to you in some sense. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, brother. Keep up the great work. Love from Canada. Osman, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm just reading the comment. I'm trying to get the window set up. So please forgive me for not reading your comment. There, I got both the cameras both the windows up. But anyway, jazakallah khair, barakallahu fikum. May Allah reward you. Thank you so much for the inspiration and thank you for shopping by. I need to do more. I honestly need to do more. But let me continue before I continue on to other things. But but anyway, when we had this conversation, people are being shamed into saying like, oh, you need to do more, like, or not do more. You need to learn to control yourself. Men can't control themselves. It's like, okay, like I'm so tired of that straw man of an argument because it's like, oh, because we can't control ourselves in some way, shape, or form, we're almost demonized for it. Like we're looked as like disgusting individuals, and it's like it's mostly the guys that can't do it. And I'm like trying to explain to this woman that we all have our desires and we all have our issues. We have things that we can't control. Some people may not, if it's not women, if it's for guys, if it's for some people, it's just for men. It's for men most majority of the time. It's for women. We can't control a lot of times we can't control our desires when it comes to wanting sex because we have high testosterone. When it comes to some other people, it may not be women, but it might be food. It might be things that they're addicted to. There might be, watermelon or not watermelon, but junk food, like, fast food, junk food, all that stuff combined into one. People can't control their nafs when it comes to that. Does that make them a bad person? Does that make them like some kind of weak individual? I don't think so. I don't think you're weak because you can't control it. Some people were never taught to control. And this is the problem too I have with some people because they try to demonize you. It's like, oh, you just have no discipline. You have no self-constraint. But it's like, if you haven't had someone to really teach you how to constrain yourself when it comes to these things, it's hard. It's really insanely hard. And I dislike the idea that people try to shame you into that. But it's not like at the same time they're wrong in some sense. We should learn some level of discipline. But to shame us for it is just completely asinine because we're always going to struggle trying to deal with these problems. And the whole reason why I came to Islam is for discipline. I keep reiterating that every time I talk about my story. I came for discipline, to understand how to not give into my desires so much, and not to, and embrace God even more, and to pray even more, to exercise even more, to pray even more. All these things help me become a better person. And so for one thing, just to shame people for it is just absolutely wrong. But I will say that in some level of that, there is truth. Like we have to learn to control ourselves, right? It's not to shame you. It's not to make you seem like you're just a disgusting individual. It's just to say, hey, we all struggle with something, right? And so that's just the first stance. And to continue why this connects to the LGBTQ, I want to say it like this, because I'm not saying this is all people. I'm not saying this is every single gay person I know, but there is a trans woman, right, at my job. A T. I'm trying my best to use acronyms and not use the actual word, but there's a T at my job that essentially when I first met them, I was just trying to be cool with them. I can obviously tell it was like some kind of, they were somewhere in that category because it didn't look like a dude, but it didn't look like a woman either. And I don't want to say it, but I mean, I have no choice because I'm trying to be respectful of pronouns, right? I'm not trying to be like shit, making them seem like they're some kind of monster or creature, but I'm just saying, like, so they essentially told me their story. Like, they were a woman, but they took out, they cut off their B's and they took out their innards, and pretty much they shaved their head and they implanted follicles on their face so they can have a beard. And even when I talked to them, we had a little bit of conversation about their story, but at the same time, it's pretty much, I'm not going to say it's like the typical story, but I've heard this story a lot of times. I would just say personally, and it's like the typical story that I heard, like I've been abused, I've been treated like crap and all these other things. And not to just, disregard their story and their experience, but at the same time, they've been through some things. And this caused them to kind of be confused about like themselves, and for them to feel comfortable within themselves and not be bullied all the time because they were weak, consider themselves because they're a woman. They wanted to turn into a man so that way they wouldn't feel so weak. Now, this is a little bit of an, I feel like it's a little, it's a tricky situation, but it's a little bit messed up kind of way of, it's a messed up type of thinking, right? I have to become something else in order for me to be respected, and for me to be loved and cherished, or me to be left alone. And I think this messed up. Their experiences were like that, and I feel bad for them in some way. But at the same time, I feel bad for them, but I understand also that, if there's something going on with you, the best thing to do is to seek help. And a lot of times in Islam, I've heard already a lot of different scholars. I've heard different people's opinions from ustads, from imams, and they kind of said like steer away from going to therapy. And I can understand why, for this exact reason, because if they were to go to someone and they were to tell them certain things and kind of convince them to take certain actions, they could lead them even more astray. And I don't know if this person actually went to someone. I haven't asked them, I will say. But at the same time, I think that it's important that, yeah, and to some level and degree, this is why having a firm base in your religion is important. Because if you're not firm in your religion, you're not firm in one correct ideology, or an ideology that has one exact way of living, then everything else becomes subjective. And this is the conversation I had with this woman that I was arguing with, right? Because it's all subjectivity. And it's not this, and I told her pretty much about an example of like killing someone, right? I have one person that will say killing is okay. I have another person saying killing is wrong. And she goes back to the ideology, as long as I'm not harming anyone. But it's like, okay, let's think about it like this. If one person said that killing is okay, obviously you're harming this person. Why do they think this is okay? Well, let's just say hypothetically, this person's thinking to themselves, it's okay to kill someone because you don't know if this person could be a danger to someone else. You don't know if this person could be teaching other people ideologies that might be incorrect or invalid. And this is the problem with everything today. This is the problem. This is the problem just in general with people's mindsets. And I just can't get behind that idea of like, because, just in general, you have to essentially come up with your own, you have to come up with your own morality. And it's like, okay, I can take this opinion or I cannot take the opinion. So by this point, I'm leaving everything into my own hands, so I could choose to do whatever I want, pretty much. And that's where she was going with it. It's like, so I get to choose. I get to choose what I do is correct and true. But then if I do the wrong action, then I get shamed for doing the wrong thing. But I wasn't taught to do the right thing. I wasn't taught to be a good person. I was taught to say, you know what? I can just be a terrible individual, and you said that it's okay for me to choose. And then the whole thing is, then you're going to then, at some point, if I choose to do bad and you see me on CNN News because I just decided to take a bus full of people and drive off a cliff or something crazy, then it's like, then you're going to look at me then and say, hey, I see, this is the problem with people. But you're the one that gave me the advice saying you can do whatever you want. And this is the problem. And this is the major problem with with that kind of thinking, because it's like if you continue to think you could do whatever you want and act on impulse, then anything is possible to lie and to liably happen. And at this point, it's like, when do you draw the line? When do you draw the line and say, hey, this is the end. We need to stop doing this. We just need to stop. This all needs to come to an abrupt halt. Like and this sounds a little tough, but I mean, but it just becomes so overly complicated that it doesn't need to be that complicated. It doesn't. And no offense, like, kind of to continue my story, like, this is not just this person, by the way, this T that I met at my job, but there's other people too, and there's another male that actually keeps trying this with me too, but they keep trying to, how can I say, they try to assert themselves to me in a way of like trying to flirt with me, get with me, even when I made it my stance completely and utterly clear that I'm not with that kind of stuff, right? And this is again why, not just about why you're thinking, why I think like having a subjective view of things isn't wrong all the time, but also because, like, if you don't control yourself, then this stuff happens where I've told people before I'm not comfortable with certain things, and they keep trying it. And I've said it to them privately. I said, hey, like, can you leave me alone? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not like that. Leave me alone. I still get message from this random dude that keeps trying to flirt with me. He keeps trying to every little once in a while, he keeps trying. And then when it comes to this T, now they always bring up like their S experiences. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about your S experiences. I don't want to talk about these things. Like, why do I want to listen to this? Like, for real. Why do I want to listen? I don't want to listen to this. I've already told you I'm not comfortable with it, but why talk about it? You have nothing else to talk about except this. And this is another problem. It's like, what else is there to talk about with you? Like, I have nothing else to talk about. Like, if I talk about politics, it always leads back to that. It always leads back to how we're oppressed, or it leads back to, like, issues. Or if I talk about my love life, it comes back to this. Or if I talk about just my normal day-to-day, it always leads back to that. Why is it always this conversation about this and that? Like, this is where I personally draw the line. And I've tried to, like, be lenient before in the past with this kind of stuff, because I understand, like, yo, man, like, we're all people. Sometimes life can be, depending on how you decide to look at life, which we're going to get to watching this video in just a little bit, which I like how Dr. Shadi Al-Masri actually kind of says this, because life can be ugly or good depending on how you look at it. Life to me is beautiful. Life to me is liberating within itself. And to essentially look at life in such a negative connotation, to me, that's something that shows something's wrong within that society. It shows something's wrong with that individual person. But like, before we even get to the society, we got to ask ourselves, when it comes to this person, what's wrong with them? And once we come to find out, okay, we don't know exactly what's wrong with them, but if we keep asking the question, where does this come from? You eventually are going to get to the question. You're going to get to an answer. And that answer is like, there's something in the past, there's something with their family, some kind of terrible experiences always happened to them. And this experience has shaped how they see life. And I'm sorry to say it, like, I understand 110%, because before I embraced Islam, I was lost myself. I can't be utterly and completely cruel and say, hey, like, oh, well, I can't be like those people the woman I just said, that just said, hey, I'm going to give you an option. I'm going to tell you how to live your life. And then, oh, well, that's not how life works. You have to help people. And, like, that's the thing. We're supposed to help each other. Now, I understand where it could be, like, you still kind of, like, you know, in some way, you're kind of, like, crossing that line a little bit where it's, like, you could potentially turn something into something that it's not. And it could go left or right. But at the same time, we should help people. And when it comes to figuring out what's wrong with them, figure out what the problem is first, and then help them go along their way, and try to check in every now and again. I'm not saying go MIA, but I'm just saying check in every now and again. Make sure that they're fine. There's nothing wrong with checking in on people. But the thing is, back to the whole point is just that, you know, the whole thing is, depending on how you look at life is going to be that way. Life is going to be negative. Like, for example, when I was talking to this woman, it felt like everything was cynical. Like everything was like, if there is a God, then he had, there has to, why did he make things the way they are? And in Islam already, like now I've been studying a little bit, but we all know that there is something wrong with your aqidah. If you have this issue of like wondering why God does what he does. Granted, is it an innate human disposition to say like it's normal to ask these questions? Allahu alam. But at the same time, these questions do arise with people, especially the kuffar, especially the mushrikeen, al-kitab. Like these people continuously ask this same question. And even when I was a Christian, I try to steer away from those kind of things. Because I bring it, and I don't know how literal people take me when I bring up this experience, right? When I remember I was in the car, and I was driving with my mom. And when I was driving with my mom, she asked me when we were going to church, do you believe in God? We were having a conversation about God, but she said, do you believe in God, Anthony? And I said, yeah. She said, why? I said, well, first of all, where did all this come from? You're telling me all this, where did the world come from? Like, where all of this come from? This just came from nothing? And I said this. I remember this. I have a sound memory of this. And she said, that's a good perspective to have. But she said, if you're wondering where all this came from, where did God come from? And I remember I literally was sitting in the car with her, right? And I was trying to like figure this. I was literally like trying to piece it together in my head. And all I did, I really felt like my head started hurting. Like I felt like it was crushing itself. And I decided to stop thinking about it. And when I stopped thinking about it, everything became better. My head wasn't hurting. I didn't feel like my head was crushing. I felt like I was just okay. But every time I try to, in the future, whenever I try to think of things like that, because people always try to ask that question, like, where does God come from? Every time I try to think about it, it always give me a headache. It always make my head literally hurt. And this is what caused me to think, you know what? I don't need to know where God came from. I just need to know he exists. And this is the thing that everybody should be thinking about. Everybody should have this level of aqidah, because if you continuously ask, like what about, why does God do these things? Like, why does God allow evil in the world? Why does God such and such? Like, you start to like go into things that could lead you potentially to kufr and lead you into a mindset that's it's just not healthy, man. It's not a healthy mindset to have. Like, I'm always questioning God's motives. And from that perspective alone, I could tell that this woman that was questioning me so much, I can tell that there was something wrong in here. I can tell that she was having issues. And I felt bad, right? I felt really bad because I was just like, what do I do? You know, like, I don't know what to do. Like, for real, I don't know what to say. Like, there's only so much dawah that I feel like you can give a person. I just invited her to Islam. I told her to look into the religion, and I actually like try to like be super biased, because that's the problem with bias, is because like the more you're biased about something, everything else just kind of like, okay, I've heard this before, bias. Like, it's okay to have a natural bias. We always have a criticism of something that doesn't make. If we don't understand it then and there, we're always going to be somewhat biased about it because we don't understand it per se. But that's the thing. You have to be open-minded for these things, because if you're not open-minded and you close your mind off to every possibility that there is, you automatically become this walking cynical individual that doesn't think about anything other than themselves. And this is wrong. This is wrong. I'm sorry that I'm preaching, but I feel like I am. But anyway, it was beautiful when Dr. Shadi said, you know, he's going to talk about it and I'm going to play it. But like, he said something along the lines of like, essentially, like, if your view of life is like this, then everything's doomed to begin with. You're doomed to begin with, because you're coming from a negative mindset. And the reason why I agree, this hit me so hard is because it hit me so hard because it reminded me of what my great grandmother said to me a lot of time. Like, she used to say there is no such thing as can't. Like, she would try to remove. She told me to try to get that definition, get that word out of my head. Like, literally get it out of my head and say, like, there is no such thing. Like, every time you put that word, you're putting a negative connotation onto everything that you're about to say. You're thinking about things in a negative. Instead of like being, solution based, you become negative. become cynical. Now it's okay. He also touches on this too. He said it's okay to have a level of pessimism because, like, yeah, like we have to have some level of pessimism. Like, what if this doesn't work? Okay, then like he gives a good example, mind you. I'm gonna play it, but yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna show the clip, and I'm gonna mute myself, and I'm gonna try to see if I can find it. I'm gonna play a little bit of what he says to kind of touch on things along the way up until that point where he talks about it. But then we're gonna go from there. I need to become better at like tagging videos and like saving them for later, so I can get these live streams a little bit more concise. But here we go.
Okay.
You screwed up.
Okay.
You came across that, whoever came across that decision and decided.
Do you agree with the observation?
Yeah, the observation's sound.
Okay.
And decided that, yeah, the left is the one that's going to help us, right? They may have helped you in some fringe things, but the root of the matter is that their philosophy is rooted in their desires it's eventually you're going to cross paths. You have to cross paths with them eventually. But when you do cross paths, it's utter war, right? It's good. So why go into that conflict in the beginning? Cut it from the beginning, right? End this from the beginning.
Is the decision that was made, whether conscientiously or otherwise, do you believe it was a genuine ijtihadi issue in terms of like...
What's ijtihad?
Ijtihad meaning...
In what?
In the fact that we are living here as minority Muslims. I'm only going to regurgitate arguments that have already been presented.
I got you.
Right?
Yeah.
We are a minority living here at a time like none other in our history as an ummah, where there's so many non-Muslims living amongst non-Muslims in their lands is in high numbers, right? Been there for like 50, 60, 70 years. Okay. And to survive and preserve our rights and to not be victims of Islamophobia, state or everyday or otherwise, we need to position ourselves somewhere politically. And the left seemed or appeared to be, and some would argue still are, the more plausible natural allies because they don't want to kill you, they don't want to exterminate you.
But they do want to kill your faith.
But they don't want to physically kill you and exterminate you.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, whether we have a generation of apostates or not is another conversation, right? But to kill, because the other argument is the right want to kill. They literally want to exterminate you.
Is that really true?
I don't think it is.
They may have a lot of hatred, but there are Muslims in Alabama.
Yeah.
There are Muslims in Texas. There are Muslims in those places. Wouldn't it have happened already?
Yeah.
Wouldn't some violence have already happened? So I get that they hate us, right? And I don't feel it, because if I go dressed like this in street clothes, no one necessarily knows I'm a Muslim, right? Women feel it. They do feel it, and I have to respect their perspective, right? They feel it, and they feel because of their hijab. Not to cut you off, but they feel because of their hijab. Even young kids know, right, that we get accepted by them because we're different. They accept us, right? So, because we have something different, right? So, they feel it. I have to respect their 50% of the population. So their perspective is something that we're going to take into account. So they feel very much, threatened by the right, right, or unsafe in the right. If we were a bunch of guys living in Alabama and the people there didn't want us, this is the most exciting thing ever. We're going to have a fight, brawls, riots every day, right? And it's going to be, and I think that we will come to an agreement, personally speaking, because these are people who believe in an objective truth, right? And they believe in right and wrong. Okay, so we're already in common. We have something in common.
We're talking about the right. What's generally perceived as the right.
If there was such a thing as the right, they want you dead and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just it's just I'm just imagining what life would be like if we had that situation. And anyway, keep going.
So the ijtihad, I mean, let's do inverted commas here.
Yeah.
The ijtihad would be that, look, we made a decision collectively or individually as faith leaders, as a movement in some cases or as groups, that this particular spectrum of politicians or activists in the West are the ones who would be our natural allies, because we seem to have a lot in common with them. We're also a discriminated minority and so forth, right? And this is a call that we've made, and we deem this to have been the correct one. And therefore, when it comes to the issue of LGBTQ, whilst we can say that the acts themselves are haram by consensus, we are living here amongst non-Muslims in a non-Muslim land, and we too need to kind of advocate and preserve and protect their rights, or at least respect their right to do X, Y, and Z.
No, I'm not respecting anything. And I have nothing to do with this. You guys do that on your own.
Okay.
I can already foresee the way that these people behave. It's very nice on the outside, very glossy on the outside, but eventually you're going to cross paths, okay? And they're vicious when you cross paths. It's going to get vicious. And you have to edit out part of your religion a lot. I'm not saying I want to go pick fights with everybody. And I'm not saying that you're not ever going to have an alliance. Like, if I'm living in my local township, I'm going to treat people based on what do we need to do? What do I need? What do we with them? I'm going to treat people on an individual basis, right? Republican or Democrat. Because truth of the matter is that you do need at some point to interact with your larger society.
Absolutely.
If I have a big organization, I need to be on good terms with the mayor, with the chief of police. I need to be on good terms with the representatives, the congressmen. I need to either that or I leave, right? Because you need, if you're an organization and you're a big community, you will be interacting with these people. Why have a headache? So I understand the need to interact, but a lock, stock, a wholesale joint, open collaboration like that, no.
Dr. Shadi, do you think it's quite a strong case to present though on paper? Palestine.
All right, so I wanted to touch on that real quick, and then after this, I want to probably turn off my camera for a sec, as I want to make sure my phone's not dying. So I use my phone to like actually record myself now. But anyway, just touch on this a little bit. But kind of like you were saying, it is vicious, and it's like, and that's the thing. Like, for example, when I protested back in 2020. I think it was 2020. Yeah, when COVID just hit. When I protested, there was a lot of people that were there. It was white people, black people, Indians, all that. There's a lot of different people that were there during the protest, during the Black Lives Matter protests. And, I felt great. I felt amazing that there was so many people that came to stand up for the injustice that a lot of black people have been dealt and continue to be dealt. And that's a whole nother topic within itself that I really will want to make a video on at some point. But right now, when it comes to like after that I protested, I started taking to social media a lot. And maybe I should not do this. I don't know, because I don't know. I can't make it like a comparison analysis. I'm like, what is real and what is fake? What is legitimate and what's fake? Because we all know that online things can be pretty fake. There's people that supposedly there's Indian people that actually pose as like Christian extremists and try to pretty much bash Muslims online, and they'll do it like with legitimate pictures of people and with regular names, and they come and try to actually bash Muslims, right? And the thing is with that, right? The biggest thing is with that is, just with that example, is like when I go online, I don't know who's really like legitimately like feeling the type of way and saying certain things. So for example, around the time after the protest happened, I was going online and I was looking at what people were saying. I was looking at the conversations that people had, like a lot of different conversations. I was looking at a lot of them because I wanted to know what people were thinking. I wanted to know people's opinions, because I'm not going to sit here and say that I agreed, even when I was protesting, did I agree with like every little Black Matter Lives person? Because I don't know what they're protesting for. I just know I'm here to say, hey, give black people a chance to get better, to diversify, to actually become educated, to build upon each other. because because the thing is, the education system in a lot of black communities, for one thing, is already bad. We don't have legitimate teachers that care for the students. The students themselves have parents that don't necessarily care, or if they don't care, they spoil the crap out of them. And we have people that are just not educated and not guided. So that's one thing with the education systems. When it comes to poverty, we have people that are black people, or not a lot enough black people are within, in like legitimate, in legitimate roles to actually make a change within their communities. They don't even care about the communities. They leave the communities. And this is a lot of different issues within the community, right? But once again, I digress. I wanted to see what other people's opinions were like. When it came to the LGBTQ, when it came to some of the white people, I remember specifically, there was like a couple of things that struck me that kind of like made me think about, am I really standing for something that's good here? Or what are people utilizing this movement for? And one post that I saw, which is a little vulgar, but I'll just keep it short. There was a white woman that I knew, that I personally knew, and she shared a picture saying like, I'm going to protest because I like black, male genitalia. And there was like a lot of black people that took off on her, saying like, this is not the reason why we're protesting here. And like, don't try to I guess you could say, sexualize or I keep saying it, but keep S-ing the male body. Stop trying to make it like this object and things of that sort, right? What? Bro, get out of here, man. What do you got? What are you talking about? Move. And there. Anyway, I don't know what this guy's talking about. When you're a small streamer, people are going to come in and saying wild things. This was in the chat, so don't pay attention. But anyway, when it came to that stuff, that's what they were talking about, and the black people got mad. Another thing that happened was there was a lot of LGBTQ saying, since we march with y'all, you better march with us. And because I think like it was around the time of actually in June, I think it was around Juneteenth. And like we were trying to make, and I remember like people were saying we're going to have marches. I want to see everybody that went, all the LGBT, the rainbow team that went to these marches with the black community. We need to see them at ours as well. And I automatically said no. In my mind, I was like no, because this is not the reason why I protested. I didn't protest so I can go so we can you can help us out and help us out, and then we rely on you, and then we help each other. It's like, no, you either stand with us or you're just against it. And that's just how I view things. I don't view things in a matter of like, oh, because you help me, I'm going to help you out. No, if I'm doing something, I'm doing it because I want to do it, period. I don't want to do it because somebody else is going to help me. So that mentality was already jacked. And there was a lot of people from that community that were saying things like this. And this is the thing that struck to me. And so when it came to that, there was a lot of times where I would speak up about these things, and I would get a lot. And when I say a lot, I was getting a lot of hate, not only from friends, not only from people that I knew, but also from people that were close to me, like some of my brother's friends, like my closest friends, like they were against what I was saying. Like even when it came to, they were against all of it. So it wasn't a really good conversation to have. It wasn't easy to have it wasn't easy to have these conversations. It was not easy. And so I agree. Like when we start relying on other people, and then not relying on other people, but when we start like pushing against what we don't believe in, then things become ugly. Things get dark, and things get kind of gross, and kind of violent, and it becomes a mess. And he's right about that. And sometimes it's not about, once again, asking for help. It's about, hey, you helping us or not? There is no, I need you, you help me. No, you either help us or not. Like, I mean, just in general, if you even agree that we should just deserve a chance, then stand with it. If you are not with that and you think, oh, I'm just doing this so you can help me later, then no, come. So that's just how it is. Anyway, I'm going to continue. I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to make sure my camera's good because I got to make sure my phone's charged. And let's continue.
Racism, CVE laws, Islamophobia.
What is this alliance going to do?
The problem I'm trying to say is that on paper, those are quite powerful things because these are things that do affect Muslims.
What is the source of all those sympathies? What is the source?
For who? The source for who? The liberals or the Muslims?
For the liberals.
Okay, for the liberals is that obviously...
Just minority rights.
Yeah, minority, but with obviously a much longer agenda, of course.
When the liberals deal with Muslim countries and the Sunnis are the majority, we're the bad guy.
Yeah.
And they will support every little Qadiani, yogi, atheist Muslim, right?
Yeah.
That's who they'll support.
Druze, Qadiani, everything.
So their usul, just because at one moment in time, there's a parallel between two roads. Are we going to be all happy all of a sudden? Eventually, these roads are going to cross.
So how do we then navigate, pun intended, how do we then navigate in environments, in societies where a significant demographic of the people lean towards such persuasions and ideas, in schools, amongst teachers, practitioners in the education sector, and so forth? We have to navigate our differences with them. What would your advice be to students in MSAs and Islamic societies here who find themselves in that situation, at that crossroads where, subhanAllah, you know, as Muslims, we're pro-Palestine for our brothers and sisters in Palestine and occupied Palestine. Islamophobia affects us. Most Muslims in the UK, 70% plus, are people of colour, so that they are non-Caucasian. So these things affect us, and we find that in the university situation, they seem to be the most available allies.
Give me a specific hypothetical.
Because
you gave a blanket thing. Give me a specific.
It's very common that Islamic societies and MSAs would hold joint events with the Palestine Solidarity Campaign societies or certain pro-Palestine societies. I mean, this is standard. Like many MSAs, many ISOCs will do joint events. Those pro-Palestine societies that exist have left-leaning, pro-LGBTQ, atheists, all kinds of things happening there of the left-leaning demographic, and they are also outspoken in Palestine. So when it comes to an Islamic society or an MSA holding an event on an LGBTQ issue, they may have to self-censor to some extent because of their alliance with a non-Muslim or mixed pro-Palestine society. This happens.
I ask myself, where does victory come from?
From Allah, of course.
So then why do I need these groups?
Because we find ourselves in a situation where we do not hold authority and power, and we need
So the mentality from the get-go is we're weak.
Okay.
We're not weak.
So what's your advice to these students?
We have to be original from ourselves, right? Understand where power comes from. I can't give advice to the students. I'm not in their shoes, right? But general principles. We're not weak, right? We may be on the chessboard appear weak, right? But those true success and victory will not come from those groups, right? It's not going to come from those groups. And on top of that, the Palestine issue. I've never understood local activism on the Palestine issue. Maybe, I guess, raising awareness, right? Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't get too cozy with anyone who I know in the future we're going to cross paths. So what do I have to not speak out against atheism now? I can't speak out against anything. I have to censor too much. It's not a good deal, right? So I never seen. Well, why don't I ask you this, right? If this is the norm, what are the results? Show me the result. Show me the profit of such alliances.
I mean, look, those as in like the deliverables. What?
Where are the deliverables?
Okay, deliverable. I mean, they could argue a fair amount of things.
No, I want to know what the deliverables are, not what they're arguing there.
Well, some of the things that would be argued is that Palestine is being discussed in mainstream politics. We've had that in North America and we've had that in the UK. So these politicians, Muslim politicians or non-Muslim politicians, the ones who are pro-LGBTQ or have made alliances with those leaning politicians and activists and movements, they now also speak about Palestine in the House of Parliament. I forgot the Somalian sister's name, the American Democrat. What's her name?
I forgot.
I forgot.
Ilhan Omar.
Ilhan Omar. You know, she talks about Palestine. You know, Rashida Tlaib. You know, she slams Israel. You know, so you know, this is the outcome. This is the deliverable. This is the result. We are now have politicians who are criticizing Israel and its occupation, the heart of the governments and parliaments of the West.
If a liberal army marched on Israel and said, "We are liberating Gaza. We are making Gaza a state," okay? Right? I would say we're just trading one problem for another. Okay?
Yeah.
We're just trading one problem for another. Because when those people liberate you, you owe them now. Right? I don't want you liberating me. Okay? I'll liberate myself. Because if you liberate me, now I owe you. Now I have to tiptoe with your agenda. Okay? I have to make sure that you get your paid back. So I'm very careful. If I'm drowning, who saves me? Right?
Could there be principled engagement with either left or right?
You're asking somebody who has blacks and whites, right?
So tell me about your blacks and whites then. Surely there can be times where there can be principled engagement.
This is why I'm not in politics.
On single lone issues.
Yeah, I don't have experience in this because I have a low threshold of tolerance for something that I know in the future there's not going to be much of a relationship here.
So how have you navigated your difference?
I haven't navigated anything. I do my own thing.
You're telling me Dr. Shadi al-Masri, in his many years of traveling, studying, living, surviving, being a community person, you've never had to cross paths with the left?
No, of course I did.
In a work capacity, in an educational capacity, in a community capacity, no?
Of course I did.
So how did you navigate those differences?
In the same way I navigate with a Hindu or a Christian, right? You go do your thing, I'm doing my thing. We had the chair of a department one time, she was a lesbian, right? I did my thing, you do your thing, right? I'm not going to put myself in a situation where we're ever going to have to talk anything outside of the department work.
Okay.
Right? I had colleagues in universities who were homosexuals, right? And who were, okay, you do your thing, I'm doing my thing. Like, what's the business here? That's why I asked, what is a specific relationship?
Okay. And I'm glad you actually gave the example of, the anecdotal example of, I will treat them or engage with them as I would with a Hindu or someone else. One of the criticisms levied at the navigating differences statement was that the tone and language at times was one of coexistence, acknowledgement, if not overtly, the tone and the language. I know you're going to probably ask for specific quotes. If not, I'm just saying that.
Was that in the text, coexistence?
What?
It was in the text?
Was it in the text?
I can't even remember, to be honest with you.
I can't recall.
I didn't remember
I know
any
that's really
red
bad
flag.
as a host. That's really bad.
Well, we can pull it up. Nafis, why don't you pull it up? Tell us if there is coexistence in there.
Yeah.
Why don't I ask you this? Or I'll just tell you this right away. Coexistence to me is something that is not in my choice, right? I have to coexist with the people that are around me. I don't have a choice. You asked me how I navigate it. How I navigated it is, I would say, I deal with them. I don't want to have problems. I'm in my business. You're in your business. Right? That's it. I'm in my business. You're in your business. That's my navigating differences. I'm not going to attack you, and I expect you not to come at me. Let me see that, please, so I can give you my sharh.
No, thank you.
Or how I perceived it. Yeah. Right? Do they expect me because I'm waving to them that I affirm their religion and their gods? You contribute to it. No offense to my like some I have good relations with some Catholics. Okay? No offense to them, but you know where I come from. You're the reason for a lot of these problems. You couldn't stop the atheists, the philosophers. You couldn't answer them. You couldn't convince your kids. You couldn't fill your kids' hearts with enough sakina to keep this religion going. When the temptations came and they thought with their mind and they asked their heart, you failed. They went with the route of temptation. Historically speaking, you can't really prove your book is the actual word of that Jesus brought or Moses brought. Any intellectual will say it's myths. There's no real chain here. There's no historicity to this.
Yep.
Right? Not enough.
I wanted to pause it here for just a quick second because this is also a thing that I had a conversation with the woman about. And sorry to skip along. I'm trying to like kind of shorten it because I do have to go in a little bit to go to pray. and I have a class, so I have to make sure I make this short and sweet. But this is important because the thing is, when it comes to philosophy and it comes to agnostic view and atheistic view, is that they have questions. They have really tough questions. And one thing that I was doing in 2014, 2015, I started noticing, and this is what I always call this, man. Like, no one's going to steal this from me, man. I'm trademarking it here and now. 2014, 2015 was like the age of wokeism. Like, it was like, it's when wokeism started becoming like legit. People were having conversations about things, like legit conversations about politics, about religion, about philosophy, about science, like all these different categories that I never in my life had conversations with people before. Like, before, it was always short-minded stuff. Like, and I don't, and I always question myself too, though. I will, to be fair, I always wonder if it was just because I was hanging around the wrong people, or hanging not around enough people, because my mom was a little strict on me from like living my life, like a little too strict, I will say. But alhamdulillah, like she kept me protected from a lot of this nonsense out here. But I would always have conversations with people. I'll try to have conversations with people about religion. I try to have conversations with people about science and all these other things, philosophy. The only place I could find it was online. But when it came to meeting people in person, there was never these conversations, or at least it wasn't like, if it wasn't a conversation, it was always short-minded stuff. Like, what do you like to eat? What do you like to drink? Like, what do you like to go and go party? And what is your favorite theme park? Like, these small-minded things. And then I started noticing around 2015, especially, like, people started coming out talking about things that I never in my life seen them talk about before. Even go on Facebook and start talking to them about it. And like he kind of similar to what he was saying, like, these people were asking, and when I was Christian at the time, these people were asking me insanely hard questions that I never really pondered over before. And I will give that to the philosophers and to the agnostics and atheists. I will say that they have some really good questions. But the thing is like, at the end of the day, like, where does the line get drawn for the questions? It's like, okay, we're just going to keep asking questions until our brain explodes. And like, I remember I used to use as a kind of like dawah Christian missionary tactic, and I still use it today. And if you ever watched the movie Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, kind of like where the ending came, the woman was trying to find this crystal skull so she can find, these atheists. I mean, these, not atheists. Trying to find these aliens so she can get the knowledge. And she finally found the crypt where all the aliens were. And the crypt, all the aliens became one after they connected the skull again, and it became a little spaceship, and they took off into space. But before that happened, she was like, I want to know it all. I want to know the answers. And the aliens started giving her all this knowledge. And it got to a point where she was just like, okay, I know enough now. I know this is too much. This is too much for me to take. And this is and she pretty much like, she pretty much just like, straight up like, I think like she lost her mind kind of ordeal. I can't remember specifically how she died, but I know that she died in that film. The woman that kind of died with the little bowl cut or whatever with the glasses. She ended up dying. But the thing is, like, she did all this so she can get knowledge. Knowledge is good, but knowledge to a certain extent is like, there's an extent to knowledge, right? There's power within it, but at the same time, to know everything is impossible. It's impossible to know everything. Only person that knows everything is Allah, right? The Al-Hakim, he's the all-wise, he's the most knowledgeable. And to me, it's like, it gets no simpler than that. Like, we're not going to know everything. Like, people try to say, like, oh, because we know a little bit about science now, like, our technology is so equivalent, like, just so unequivocally, like, just powerful, that we are, like, pretty much almost like gods in a sense. And this is where I draw the line myself. Doesn't matter if I was a Christian, doesn't matter if I'm agnostic, doesn't matter if I'm Muslim. I'm Muslim now, but the thing is like, we're not God. We're never going to be God. We're never going to figure out what God is. I just personally believe in that. At least not in my lifetime. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think it will happen. And nor in a dozen other lifetimes, I don't think it's going to ever happen, us figuring out if God exists or not. The only time we're going to know is on the day of Yom Al-Qiyamah, and that's the end of that. To me, like, that's just how it is. But these people do come up with questions, and it's sad because Christians are defenseless with giving these answers. And this is where I kind of left the faith. Why I left the faith? Because there was no answers. Like I would look out, and I wasn't like just one of those regular layman Christians. I would read. I would try my best to read. I got to a point. I remember one year, I think it was in 2016. I actually was trying to read the Bible fully. I read from Genesis I think I read from Genesis. I can't remember specifically. I know it was Genesis all the way up until, I want to say maybe like almost halfway through the book. I read up to it. And I was reading a lot, and I was skipping through the book trying to find answers and things every time, like kind of like how Muslims do with hadith and things. And when it came to having answers, what does the Quran say about this? What does the hadith say about this? What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about this? I would look up in the Bible, what does the Bible say about this? What does Jesus say about that? What does this? What does Suleiman say? What did David say? Like where like all these different things, I would look it up. And they had answers, but in a lot of things they didn't have answers. But Islam has a lot of answers. And he goes on to talk about that, which I'm going to touch on. After I touched on this, I'm going to dip out.
To change my life, to stop doing interest, just to lower my gaze. These are big asks. I need to know for sure Jesus said that. For sure Moses said that. If you're telling me it's just thousands of years ago, yeah, okay, that's a nice story, but I can't change my life on that. You know how hard it is to not commit adultery, right? Fornication when you're young. It takes a lot of effort, right? That effort has to be underwritten by some real historicity here.
Solid foundation.
Solid foundation.
Absolutely.
Atheists bring questions. Do you answer them, right? Mm-hmm. Does your theology make sense? And then let's get to the actual reality of it. When I practice this religion, do I feel something in here? Do I feel a sakina? So I say that we're in this situation because of those false religions, right? Because of that. The most atheistic place in the world today is Boston, and it's filled, it's the origin of the Protestants. Mm-hmm. Like the Pilgrims came, not the origin of the Protestant religion, obviously, yeah. But
quickly to touch on that, also there's a lot like that Boston is also is like, from all the tech geeks in here, we all know that the only people that are there in Boston are all the tech geeks, are all the tech nerds, the scientific people. Not to bash on them, may Allah guide them to the true path, inshallah, Allahumma ameen. But they're a lot of just geniuses there, like MIT. Like there's a lot of people that come from there and they stay in Boston. Like even one of my best friend's dad, he moved to Massachusetts as well. Like he lives there, and he works in IT as well. I don't know his religious stance per se, but I just know that he has somewhat like a coexist kind of mindset, from what I understand.
The Pilgrims came. Yep. That was their home.
Yep.
Look at your kids. Fast forward down. They hate this thing. They hate religion, right? But that was the home. All the Irish Catholics, they got a lot of problems. They made movies about it, right? With all the sexual abuse of kids. Mm-hmm. So that's one reason I would not want to pair my brand of Islam. I would not want to pair the brand of Islam with those other brands. We believe you are the cause of a lot of these problems. You are a failed ship, okay? On top of that, we don't believe it's true, right? You've warped the scripture, okay? And I'm sure the Catholics and Jews believe the same thing about us. Jews believe it about Christians and Muslims. The Christians will believe the same thing about us. Fine. So, but the alliance with them on a moral issue has a lot of virtues, but you also need to put the brakes a little bit. Mm-hmm. I do not want Islam to be banded together with Judaism and Christianity because we're very different. We never had an issue with science. We never had a conflict with observing the world and looking at our book. We never found a conflict.
Or pursuing knowledge or anything of that
We
nature.
never had a conflict with sexuality.
Nope.
Right? We never had a conflict with using logic and reason.
100%.
We've never had these conflicts, right? So we've never had a conflict with proving our history. We've never had a situation where we discovered that all of our Salaf lied to us.
And these are problems that the other two do have.
Massive problems. That's why these religions failed the people. Yep. So I would like to announce to the world, we are so different. Our concept of God on top of that is completely different. They're Mujassima. Their God is a physical God in the universe, right? They have no concept of tanzih, what we call tanzih, transcendence of God. And when they do, they're copying Islamic theologians. right? They're copying Islamic theology. And I see them in one sermon. They don't need to copy properly. In one sermon, they will say God is wholly other. Okay? And I even heard one guy, he's wholly other, right? Meaning he is not in time, place, or whatever. But then wait a second, what about Jesus then? Right? Am I getting these things wrong here? Am I like, so they did benefit a lot from Islamic theologians, Muslim theologians. I mean, you have the one guy, that type of ethos, that group, they hardly mentioned kufr. He is not pleased with them to be in a state of kufr. That is what should take up 90% of our thinking. And 10% you protect yourself, right? Don't you think Allah is going to protect you? That's why I said the people who are at the forefront of that political element, the equation is not balanced. They never talk about the power of Allah. So that's where the true Islamic leadership vis-a-vis the political world that we live in, if the equation's balanced, okay, then we can trust them. And if the priority is yes, and he should measure, the job of such a person is to measure, maybe take advice on the way to do it in which there's no greater harm. Okay. The way layman, we don't have to, right, about it, because you do know that.
Or a clip. Let's say Dr. Shadi al-Masri said something in a talk,
The public figure.
Something is their contribution.
The public figure, backlash from enemies. So the one that, or we are fighting for the cause that Allah wants us to fight for. We're getting good results, and you're getting backlash. And I'm not saying that the facts that you said are not true. They're true, but that's not how you handle fear, right? To go and run to anyone who will give me a hand.
And this group's going to be my Sheikh. So maybe we can make a more of an effective block.
You cannot be a leader. I'm sorry. That person, I'm bullied. I need to get the other nerds. Remember from school? Let's get all the kids that are bullied and huddle together, and maybe, right, the big bad, jocks will leave us alone. No, I don't want to be around those. I can take care of the jock.
How open and frank we are on certain positions, certain issues.
But I don't hear them speaking enough about the power that we have. That's why I'm rejecting this perspective. I'm not saying
that's the point I'm trying to make.
Only if you have proven that you are also looking at all the positives, right? Then if you have proven that, and you're not going down how they think, he changed their mood. A very big problem.
The khandaq.
Khandaq.
Yeah.
Part that comes out of such a mentality is going to be self-defeating, because his mind is already
minority fiqh, living amongst non-Muslims, especially the modern connotation and the conversations and the work and the discourse around it. Isn't it about that very thing?
It's about the foundation, principle, framework that everything is bad, that everything is impossible, that no good is happening, that we can't practice our religion. And let us now look at every flaw in the room. That's the foundational mentality of that question. The questioner needs help. In
perhaps some of the things that we're as a minority community perceived and surveilled very differently to any other community that exists in society. We are seen as a fifth column. We are cannot be trusted.
So
we are seen as people whose loyalties
is that a surprise?
We are seen as people whose loyalties are elsewhere. Yeah, they can never truly be British or American. They have the loyalty to this thing called ummah and so forth, right? A handful of their people, when it all goes pear-shaped, they will go blow things up. They'll drive cars and go into clubs and start shooting up people and all these kind of things.
Okay.
They teach their children stuff, madness in the madrasas and so forth. So we are a community that's heavily surveilled. It's not entirely trusted. There's things that are happening abroad in the Muslim world that's directly affecting us here. Given this very unique and hostile situation, Dr. Shadi, do we not have to make certain exceptions when it comes to alliances? whether it be with the left or those who happen to be pro-LGBT or with those who Orthodox Christians and Jews. You know, is it a case of preserving Muslim rights versus preserving Islamic identity? What is it? Because it is a unique situation, and perhaps some of the things that we're addressing theoretically is actually harder to practice because it's hard out here. And
the foundation of your question disgusts me.
But it's one that's asked and it's one that's presented.
I will not answer the question. I will correct the foundation of this question. This is a person who needs help. This is a person who is a negative. This is a person who needs to be lifted up and clean your eyes out and start saying Alhamdulillah.
The entire basis of
start looking at all the positives. Start looking at all the positives.
Is it minority fiqh a manifestation of this? Or what's known as minority fiqh, living amongst non-Muslims, especially the modern connotation and the conversations and the work and the discourse around it? Isn't it about that very thing?
It's about the foundation, principle, framework that everything is bad, that everything is impossible, that no good is happening, that we can't practice our religion. And let us now look at every flaw in the room. That's the foundational mentality of that question. The questioner needs help in re-cleaning out. They need to hose down his brain and his heart.
9/11 is very serious. 7/7 is very serious. The war on terror is very serious.
Do you know how many people have converted and love Islam? This person...
The laws that are coming in, government after government, year after year, that attack us, that surveil us. I'm talking about, these are the things that people will say to justify alliances, whether it be interfaith or otherwise.
There are courts that have upheld the right for masajid to exist and have awarded them millions of dollars. Let us now go down the path of this person and end up on Prozac and antidepressants because all they see is the negative. Nothing that comes out of such a person is good. Nothing that comes out of such a mentality is good. Everything that comes out of such a mentality is going to be self-defeating because his mind is already self-defeated. Because this person, how did this person live? Everything we look around, let's find the negatives. Let's look at everything, how everything's bad. Let's see how everything could go bad.
Why does it have to be negative? Why can't it just be a case of a person who's mindful and conscious of how they're going to survive?
Let me teach you how to survive. You can only survive how you feel. You cannot survive and thrive if you are like a scared mouse. They don't survive. They get killed. You are the first person who's going to get killed. The one who thrives and survives is the one who is constantly upbeat. Let's go. It's a sunny day. Smile. Say Alhamdulillah. Make wudu. Make yourself look good. There's a lot of good things going on. That action, from that perspective, will always be good. From that perspective, things will always be good. If you are, the Prophet ﷺ was surrounded by armies coming, thousands, 10 times more than the men of Medina. And they had a week to dig this trench. And they were hit a problem, a very big problem.
The Khandaq.
Khandaq.
Yeah.
Part of the trench was stone. Immovable stone, unbreakable stone. That's a problem. That's a bridge for the enemy. That is an existential problem, physical existential. Physically, we will all be killed because of this thing. The Prophet ﷺ sees the Sahaba gathering around it, sees the look on their faces. The look on their faces. We're done if we don't get this rock. And it's the old world. You can't just break a rock, right? What did the Prophet ﷺ do? He takes one strike, and of course there's a spark, right? The spark is pretty big. He tells the Sahaba, who are at this moment facing utter death, okay? Straight death. All of us going to be killed, okay? And he says, that's Persia. We're going to conquer Persia. Strikes it again. We're going to conquer Yemen. Strikes it again. Byzantium. What? Wait a second. He changed how they think. He changed their mood.
Sheikh, didn't the Munafiqeen say something during that situation?
I'm sure they did. Sounds like those people, right?
Yeah. So they said that here we are, we can barely relieve ourselves in
Thank
peace.
you. We can barely go to the bathroom in peace.
And Muhammad's giving glad tidings of
conquest.
Yeah.
World conquest. You, that questioner, he needs to be sidelined. Your perspective, your foundation.
All right, guys. So I think I try to skim around trying to figure out where the part was. That was the part there. So kind of like you were saying is that, alhamdulillah, I didn't even know about this story. I mean, I knew about the story of I think it's the story of the trench, right? Or the Battle of the Trenches. I'm not sure where it's at in the Siro. Because I'm honestly still learning about the Islamic history, but that's an amazing story about how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually changed the Sahaba's mindset, how he actually turned their mindset around to be positive versus think negative, like we're gonna die here, and it's the truth. Like even in war, they tell you the people that panic first are the ones that get killed first. Like for example, in war, like you have to make sure that you're like. They tell you, I can remember, I don't know like the basics, but if somebody was in the Marines or in the Army or something, they could tell you when you're in war, you have to remain calm. Like even in basic training, they tell you to be calm. Like they throw the Navy SEALs into a pool with like things connect. Like I think it's like a heavy, like hundreds of pounds of weight literally attached to their legs. That's pretty much sinking them to the bottom. They're tied with their hands behind their back. Their objective is to untie themselves, grab the gun from at the bottom of the pool, and then go back to the top and swim to safety. And this is a test of like how you have to be patient, because if you panic in the water, you will exhaust yourself and you can die and drown. So and it's the truth. Like this is actually this is an actual tactic, and these people, and it comes down to you having like a calm state of mind, a positive state of mind. If you have this negative state of mind, you're automatically going to get killed. You're not going to be. You're just going to go into everything that you do, and it's going to be negative. And to me, like I feel like we all, in some sense, struggle with that. But the thing, you have to constantly discipline your mind to not see the negative all the time. You have to constantly say, okay, I mean, even then, in a video with Sheikh Yusuf Estes, he even said like he was just like even when you say. Even if something good happens, you say alhamdulillah. If something goes bad, you still say alhamdulillah. Because you have to be thankful to God at all times. And this is a good way to change your perspective. And if we change our perspectives about ourselves, then we will be able to make a change within the Ummah. We won't need to rely on anyone else. So with that being said, I do have to go. I wanted to go a little bit longer, but I do have to get to class. I have to pray as well, make wudu. If you guys like the video, if you're watching back later, please hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. I will be trying to get back into the groove of this more and more and more frequently. So be on the lookout for more content. I will be posting some videos throughout the week, so be on the lookout for those. With all that being said, I love you guys so much for the sake of Allah, and I pray that everyone has a good day. Allahumma ameen. Has a good night. Allahumma ameen. And may Allah guide us all. Allahumma ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.